So here we can see the difference between an old belt, see how cracked that is, and a brand new one, which of course doesn't have any cracks at all. So if you're just replacing the belt, then that is your next step. Welcome back to Living with a Classic, and the parts have finally arrived to finish off the Range Rover. If you're new to the channel and you haven't seen any of the previous videos on this car, I'll put a link to the playlist up above and down below so you can check those out. But just a really brief recap. Before Christmas, we got this 2006 Supercharged Range Rover very, very cheaply. Haggled really hard with the person. Also, it was sort of a weird ad, not a lot of people are going to look at it, so we got it very, very cheap, but it did need some things sorted out. We've already fixed the rear brakes, already gone through the coolant system, replaced the thermostat. I'm trying to remember because all of this is spread out over quite some time because I've had issues getting parts. Things have been lost in the mail, things have been stuck in customs for weeks. But now, yesterday I finally got the last bits, and I think we should be able to get everything back together today. So the main issue left are the belts. There are two belts on this car. The primary drive belt for the alternator, water pump, power steering pump, air conditioning, all of that. And then you have a secondary belt which drives the fan and also drives the supercharger. So when I got all the other parts, the tensioners and everything in the box, the belt for supercharger was not in the box. It was supposed to be there, so that somehow got lost in customs when it was opened up, or I don't really know what happened, but I got a new one sent to me, so that finally arrived yesterday. So now I hope we can get everything back together. Before that, I just want to show you a very, very fast little video I shot with my phone when I had the supercharger belt on, but still had the primary belt on to try and hear what the noise was, and it definitely was the two idlers in there, so I'll show you that right now. And as you can hear, it was sounding terrible, so now you understand why I want to replace all that before she even, left the farm with the car. So let's head out into the cold and try and get all this together. It's about 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning here. It's a very beautiful winter day. It's nice and sunny, but it doesn't show up on camera how cold it is. It's a negative 12 degrees Celsius, and that is without counting the wind chill. So it is very, very cold here over in the storage barn, or whatever you want to call it. Here is the Range Rover, but I'm hoping that we're going to get all the belts done today. At least I'm going to try and work as long as I can before I get too cold. I got lots of layers on, and I'm going to work with some thick gloves whenever I can to try and keep the heat going, and hot tea, all of that. So just a really quick thing, this is not how the engine bay looks when you first open up. There's a cover on here and things. So if you're going to do the belts, you need to first remove the air duct over there. There are two nuts there. You need to remove the engine cover. If you want to see how to do all of this, I did this in the first service video of this car. I'll put a link to that playlist down below, and you can check that out if you want to know how to remove those things. And then in order to get to the belts, you need to remove the fan. And that's where I got some problems, because that is a big 36mm nut. This thing was on there so tight I couldn't get off. And I tried everything. There's even supposed to be a specialist tool that you hold on to two of those bolts you see down there, and didn't work either. I also tried it before when I had the belt on, because I ended up cutting the belt because I realized it would take a long time to get parts with Brexit and COVID and lockdowns and all of that, and I was right. So I cut the belt to find out which idlers were bad. The belts were dry rotted anyway, and I wanted to replace them. So that's why the car has basically been stuck here waiting for parts. And I got all the parts, and I figured, okay, I'm going to give this another shot. I must get this off. And I tried everything again, and out of sheer frustration, I just sent a picture, basically what it looks like right down there, to a friend of mine who has the same type of car. He also has the company Fenair, which I've used for a couple of videos here on some air conditioning systems. He's a good friend of the channel, Pat. He makes some great classic air conditioning systems, so I'll put a link to his website down below. If you need any air conditioning job done in your car, you should check him out. He makes really, really good stuff. And he just wrote back, so are you following the manual? And I said, yes. And he said, maybe you have the same one that I have. There's a mistake in it, because in the manual it says that this is reverse thread. And all the earlier BMWs, it is. On most of the videos of people showing, working on these cars, they say this is reverse thread. Even some specialist Land Rover shops I called around here, they all said, because I was having issues getting it off, I was asking if I can borrow the specialist tool that you hold on to here. And they all said, no, we won't lend out the tool. And they all also said that, well, are you sure you're doing it the right way? It's reverse thread. And I said, yes, I am. I'm aware it's reverse thread. However, Pat, thank you so much. He wrote to me, said, yeah, out of sheer frustration, I just tried the other way for fun, he said. And with a whack of the hammer, it came off. So it is not reverse thread on this one, at least. On the 2006 Supercharged, it appears not to be. I also did find on a forum somewhere that someone had the same issue, and they also found out that on these ones it's not. So I'm not sure on which models it's reverse and which is not. I did later find a manual specifically for a 2006, and there it seems to be correct. So I'm not sure about that. So if you're doing this job, make sure you find out which way it actually goes. I did make a specialist tool, my own version of the specialist tool. So this goes over one of the bolts down there, and then just sort of holds against. It's very hard to show on camera, but I just made a copy of that tool, and it worked well. It's all loose now. Got a big 36mm spanner there. So hopefully, that was a bit of a long intro rant, but now you understand why I've had some issues with this. Then normally you remove the fan with the fan shroud at the same time. A previous mechanic or someone has cut this here, so you can see, and they use some type of fasteners that I will try and reuse, so you can get the fan out without getting the shroud out, I think. So I'm going to see how well that works. If I feel in the summer there's a big air leaks going over here, I will probably replace the shroud. But for now, that makes it easier getting everything out. So the big plan is remove the fan. The reason you have to do that is to get that pulley off, because behind that pulley you have mounting bolts for this bracket here. That bracket is in the way to get to the back belt and so on. Also, the tensioner down there, you need to have the fan off in order to loosen tension on that belt successfully, and also I'm going to replace that tensioner. So I will remove the fan now, and hopefully everything else will be pretty easy to remove as well. Since I don't have the belt on, which you should do if you do this job, I just put on this wrench. It has a rubber belt on it. It's a big wrench for getting like big diesel oil filters off or fuel filters. So I'm just holding it in place with that, and you see I can pretty much now just spin the fan off. That's all it took, was about one whack with the hammer, and then it spins off. That's a shit. Let's see how much is left. You can start to see the thread down there. Got a little bit more left to go. There we go. Alright, need two hands to lift this out so I don't damage the radiator. Normally you would take the fan shroud off, but I don't think I need to due to that modification. Now you guys can better see what everything looks like down here. Normally the belts would still be on. So down here is the tensioner for the supercharger belt, or the front belt. So there is a slot in there for 3/8. So you can get that to move the tensioner in, get the belt off, but you don't need to take it off yet. You can remove these nuts first, usually, or these bolts. And then the tensioner for the other belt is over here. You can see it right there on camera. And there's also a hole there for 3/8 to loosen the tension. I have already done that on the inner belt as well. It's actually still sort of laying in place. I didn't cut that one. I just pushed it to the side so I could figure out which tensioners are bad. So we're going to remove these here. Then we have two fasteners here, and there should be now three inside there. Get that whole bracket off, and then we can get to the inner belt. I've already pre-loosened these before. I did that already when the belt was on, just so I knew I could get them off. They weren't that tight, but felt like a good idea. It's just 10mm, so nothing really that special. Now it's pretty dark down here. It's difficult to light, but I think when I get some more stuff out of here, I will be able to light it a little bit better for you guys, get a bigger light down there. But it's actually surprisingly tight down here, even though this is a big car. It is still, you know, surprisingly tight with this engine in here. Okay, now that pulley this comes off. Now I hope you guys can see a little bit more clear. You see there are two nuts, bolts up there. I've already loosened those off. And then you have the two ones down here. So you have the indentations right there. So you can line up a tool to get those off. For 8mm, I'll loosen those up. I'm not going to film that because it's way too tight down here. Get that bracket off, then I'll pull off the old belt. Then we can get to that tensioner there, that idler there, and that idler down in there that I need to replace. With both belts off now, you're free to replace whatever you need to. For me, it's these three parts down here. Tensioner, idler, idler. There's also another tensioner right over there. That one's nice and quiet, so all you can do is sort of spin them. You can feel like this one is all notchy and noisy. That one is also bad, and that one is quite notchy. So I'll be replacing those, but maybe all of yours are fine, just replacing the belts. But yeah, let's actually have a look at one of the belts. So here we can see the difference between an old belt, see how cracked that is, and a brand new one, which of course doesn't have any cracks at all. So if you're just replacing the belt, then that is your next step. I'm going to be removing those idlers. And that it's a 15mm, 15mm, 13mm. Get those off. I'll put the new ones back on. It's really just bolting off, bolting it back on. And then we'll get on to routing the belts again. The inner belt is now on with two new tensioners over there. You can sort of see the routing over here. I'll put up a picture as well, but it goes around the alternator. In between those two goes over here, that tensioner. And it goes down around the crank, around the power steering pump, around the AC compressor, and then up and over the water pump over here. It's different on cars if you have an extra air pump, which I think the US cars have. They have, I think it's either up here or down there. And it's a little bit different, but this is for the normal European ones. Now I'm going to put on second belt, and I also have to put away the camera because put it inside for a while because it's too cold and it says it's shutting down now, so might be a little bit of space between the next thing. I brought in the camera to the house to thaw it for a bit. It got so cold that the battery would just drain in a second, and it told me that it was too cold and it was shutting down. My phone stopped working as well, so it's very cold. But while that was inside, I put on the new tensioner over there, put this back on, and put on the outer belt. So you see it goes around the supercharger, around the tensioner, down around the crank, and up around the pulley here for the fan. So since it's really, really cold and technology is not working so well, I'm going to put the rest of this stuff on just off camera. It's nothing really special. Fan back on, hook that back in, intake and all of that, finishing off camera, and then I'll show you guys when everything is up and running. So bring the camera in again so it doesn't freeze up once more. It's another beautiful and cold day outside, not as cold as a couple days ago when I finished working on this car. I finished everything on that day, but it was just way too cold to continue filming. I went inside and warmed up. Took quite a long while to actually not feel so cold anymore. But I'm very happy that I got everything sorted, and most importantly, my wife is very happy. She's gone on several test drives. She's actually driven about 100 kilometers, and everything's been fine. It's been running really nicely. So I'm out here just to check over some things, check the fluid levels, and I'm also going to torque all the lug nuts again because she's driven a bit just to make sure that all that is fine. And yeah, check over some things. So I thought I would show you guys just a cold start of it, and it's all nice and quiet right now with the belts. Everything worked out great. So I just unlocked it here. Also, I did a just a small clean inside. It wasn't a deep clean because it was still very cold outside, but I just wiped off the seats. I treated them a little bit, got rid of all the dust, got most things to look clean. We'll do a complete detail of this car when it is not so cold outside, but it's pretty nice and fresh now, and everything works now with the new thermostat. The heat is really good. Heated seats are working. Everything's working fine. We got the kids seat there in the back, plenty of room. So everything is it's working really well. have a look under here. I still have the engine cover off because I need to fix the isolation on that. And then I can also check a little bit for leaks. I do need new hood struts when it's cold. Gotta push it up a little bit and then it locks into place. But everything's back in place. All that went really well. I did snap the little plastic thing here that holds that coolant line, so I just had to put on a zip tie for now so the coolant line doesn't go into the belts. But as you can tell, with everything in place, you can't even see anything down here. It's just extremely tight. But I'm gonna grab the key. Let's fire this thing up and just show you that it runs no well. And yeah, you can tell it's my wife's car because it has a fluffy pink keychain on it. I gave her that she really likes. Okay, we will turn off the radio. Alright, it's -9, fired right up. And you can already hear that it is nice and quiet. It was so loud before with everything. It is very nice and quiet, runs very smoothly. Really nice. And yeah, forgot to check, but coolant level is pretty good. It's a tiny bit on the high side, but I think that's fine. Everything is bled. Checked the engine oil yesterday. That was perfect to the level. Did turn black pretty quickly, so like we said when we changed the oil, I'm not going to keep the oil in this thing for that long. Drive a little bit through winter here, and then I will service it pretty quickly. Might do an engine flush the next time I service it, just because it basically turned black immediately. I like nice clean oil, but yeah, it's running nicely. Got the, not sure if I will even hear it on camera, but this thing does burble pretty nicely here. I'm gonna try later if I can clean these off a little bit, make them look a little bit nicer, just with some a pad or something, make them look a little more presentable. I have noticed one thing, that this car does get dirty pretty quickly. It's just 100 kilometers. It seems like these tires do kick up quite a bit of debris. I have a feeling that my XJ6 does not get this dirty this quickly, but yeah, so it runs really well. Heat works, everything works well. Haven't gotten any error messages so far yet, and yeah, so good update. You can hear belts are working well. So if you got noisy belts or anything on your car like this, now you basically know how to replace them. It's not that difficult. Just once you get that fan off, then everything else is really simple. But so until you start everything else, make sure you can get the fan off and then go from there. That's it for this episode, and now it's up and running on the road. My wife is really happy to have her car. She absolutely loves driving it. Like I said, she's already driven about 100 kilometers with it, and she absolutely loves it. It's running really nicely. There are, of course, still things I'm going to do to it, which I will show here on the channel. I still want to service the transmissions. I don't have any transmission errors at the moment. That was bad battery, just throwing a bunch of codes. None of that have returned, so that's really good news. Do still want to service that. I do still want to, replace the fluid in the front differential, rear differential, transfer case. Just do all of that. Power steering fluid, done the brake fluids. So almost all the fluids have been sorted out. So we're going to do the rest of it just so we know that the car should be as reliable as it hopefully will be. Then there's some body work as well that will be done a little bit later on. In a couple months or so, probably, just depending on what happens. Hopefully the car behaves as it should. Also in about a month and a half, it's time for inspection, or the yearly MOT. So hopefully it passes with hopefully passes without any issues. But if there are any issues, hopefully they're very minor ones. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe to the channel. It really does help out a lot. I'd also like to take this time to thank the supporters over on Patreon for their continued support for the channel. It really does mean a lot. So until next time, I'm Adam. This was Living with a Classic. I'll see you soon.